Good morning and welcome to Taxware's presentation today of Wintax 1040 detailed training. We are thrilled that you are here with us. Whether you're a new client or a longtime client, I have heard over and over again that whenever they watch these detailed trainings that they learn something new or learn something that they just haven't quite delved into the software in the past with. So we are glad that you are here with us. The question of the day is often, when is IRS going to open e-file, or when's this tax season going to start? And I just did another double check on IRS's website, and that date has not yet been given. We expect to know any day now that information should be given, which also doubles into hub testing and things like that. So all of that we will let you know as soon as we know. But there's some guesses out there, but nothing official from the IRS. And that's what we go by, is what the IRS has published. So we just all have to have a little bit more patience, I think, to get that information. If you have missed our annual seminar, we had an annual seminar December 13th and 14th of this past year. That information and all of those recordings can be found on our blog. So if you go to taxwaresystems.com, click on the training section, drop down there to news. If you've gone news, then what will pop open is our blog and bulletins. Bulletins are the newsletters that we either email or mail out. And then the blog is where different important notifications that we put up and other educational pieces are found. And our whole annual seminar, all the recordings and information can be found there. So you will want to look that up. Another source of great training is the tutorial videos that can be found in that same section, near that same section on our website. And so you can look for those, and those break down into nice size chunks, real specific questions that people have asked us on the support calls. So, and this training will be recorded and will be found on that tutorial video page within a few days. So we're looking forward to that, and you would have that resource for you and anybody else in your office. So with no further ado, I'm going to open up. We are thrilled to have Matthew Gray teach us today and give us this demonstration and go through the details of Wintax 1040 for your benefit. He's done it many times in the past, and we're grateful to have him in this position to do this training today. So I did have one other thing to share. At the bottom, I believe at the bottom of your screen, there's a Q&A button. If you have questions that arise during the presentation, you're welcome to put them there. They will be answered either through that chat process or answered live at the end of the presentation. So those are the options there. All right. With no further ado, Matt, I turn the time over to you.
All righty, welcome everybody. Like Catherine said, we'll be going through the 1040 individual program today. We're going to be covering a whole lot, so I will be moving at a somewhat brisk pace, but if you do miss anything or need to take a break, there's going to be a copy of the recording made available soon after. There's also all of these tips and tricks and things we're showing you today are already available on the website in tutorial video form that are in small bite-sized 3 to 5 minute chunks. So if there's anything in particular you missed or you want to go over, those videos are very helpful for that. When you first open up the 1040 program, you'll be greeted with this screen. We'll start first at the messages over here on the left-hand side. There's not very many messages here. Taxware doesn't send out very many messages during the year, but if there is something important enough that everyone should know about it, typically that will be available, that will be sent here through the left-hand side. If it's new, you'll see it show up in this dark red. And if you double click on it, that will open the message. And so you can read the message that we've sent to you. Things that we put here are usually shutdown dates, IRS, open dates. There's also, if the IRS goes down for any reason, we'll usually put a message up there. So those are key things to look out for. If this is the first time you're opening your program, the first thing you're going to want to do is put in your ERO and your preparer information. You'll do that from this big preparer and ERO setup button. simply click on that. Then you can click on the Prepare Setup button to enter your Prepare information and the ERO information button to set up your ERO information. The transmitter information is only for direct filing clients. If you don't know if you're direct filing or not, you're not. Almost everybody nowadays is A to A. I think we have maybe 1 or 2 direct filing clients. So again, if you're not sure if you're a direct filer, you're not a direct filer. That brings us to the first thing that you might come across with our program is how do you leave a screen that you've gone into? You're going to go ahead and push the OK button on the bottom right. We'll be doing this a lot, so get used to that OK button in the bottom right. Later on, I'll show you a little bit of a shortcut you can use to maneuver around the program a little bit faster. Once you're done with your ERO and your Prepare setup, we're going to go into the defaults and settings for the first time you open up the program here. In the defaults and settings, the number one thing you'll want to put in is your client ID. With your client ID in there, you'll automatically get updates that come throughout the season. You'll get the program automatically checks for those updates every time you open it, and it'll send you a little pop-up message when there's an update available. We highly recommend you download the updates as soon as they're available. They typically take less than 30 seconds to complete, and they make sure that you have all of the most up-to-date things. When states unlock, when any bugs are fixed, things like that, that updater is going to be what propagates those changes. The next thing we'll take a look at is your data and program paths. By default, your settings and data path is going to be in your C drive in the Taxware folder in a folder called settings and data. This is only important if you have a network setup where you have multiple computers talking to each other. You want to make sure that all of your computers are pointed to the same exact network location. If you're just on a standalone computer, then this is going to be the default, and that's going to be fine for you. Next, we have our current year data path and our prior year data path. You can have multiple data paths. You'll see here that I have many different data paths that I use. Today, we're using the demonstration data. Some people like to change their data paths. They have some for like a folder for January, a folder for February. They'll have different folders for different classes of clients. If you don't need all that different separation, you just want all your clients in one big pool, then you can just leave it at the default, which is going to be 2020, it's going to be 22 data. Same thing for the prior year data path. If you had multiple different data paths in the prior year, you can swap those around and you can change those, but 21 demonstration data is the one we want today. We also have program paths. So if you're using the depreciation program, which is included in your individual package, then this is going to be the location of the program for depreciation, not the data, but the program itself. So it knows where to open up the depreciation program from. Then we have the PDF DocArc program. So if you're using our DocArc program, this will need to be pointed to that program location so it can open it up and go there. Next, we have the default prepare and the default ERO. This is your default prepare. Anytime you start a new return, this is the prepare that's going to be on there. Anytime you start a new return, this is going to be the ERO that's going to be on there. If you have multiple prepares, then each station that you have the program installed on can have a different default prepare so that all the clients started on that particular station will have that prepare on there as default. I'll show you later where to change this. If, for example, somebody's needed to borrow a computer, they forgot to change this default prepare, you can change that in the individual return itself. Next, let's go into billing setup. In billing setup, you're setting your defaults for billing for the year. Anytime you make a new return, this default billing is going to be copied into that return, and then from there, it's called snapshot billing, where if you make changes on that particular bill, it won't change your defaults, but it'll change it on that particular bill. You have a number of options over here. We won't really get into that, but on the right-hand side, I do want to show you a couple of quick tips on how to quickly change a lot of your forms. For example, I've only put $100 here for the 1040, but let's say I wanted to charge a little extra for all these other ones here, the 1040X, the 1040SR, that sort of thing. I can do 150 here after selecting multiples, and it'll change for all of them. You can also control click. So if I come down to the schedule A, let's say I wanted the schedule D and the schedule C to be a little bit more expensive, I can use the control and then click in order to select multiples. And then I can say, we'll put that at 25 instead. So it's an easy way to select a whole bunch of things and charge a specific amount. Like I can just do a whole bunch, $10. Okay. We'll go ahead and exit the billing information here now. And we'll go into print setup. On the print setup, you have the default things that will print on your return. So you have, if you want to always print the bill or if it's required, print the bill, you can have that checked. If you never want to print the bill because you have your own billing software, you can uncheck that and it'll never print a bill. You can always print forms. So if you always wanted to print schedule 1, for example, even if it wasn't necessary, you can check the box there for print always and it'll do that. You can also set up different numbers of copies for things. So if I wanted 2 of everything in my list, I can shift click and then put in 2, and it'll change all of that to 2, just like you can in the billing setup. Okay. The other options we have here on the print setup is the mask social security and bank account numbers. You can select that, and then it'll only show the last 4 of the social. And I forget exactly how it masks the bank account number, but it only shows a few digits of the bank account number as well. Be very careful when you do this. It will also put a client copy watermark over your return, because returns that have the social security number and account numbers masked cannot be submitted through paper. So by checking this, it will also essentially check this box, but without checking it. So if you find yourself wondering why there's a watermark when you don't have the watermark checkbox checked, it's probably because you have this checkbox checked. One that we recommend to be turned on is this protects PDF with social security number. This will put a password on any PDFs that you produce through the archive feature for the last 4 digits of their social security number. So if their last 4 was 1, 2, 3, 4, when you try to open that PDF, it'll come up with a prompt that says, please type in the password. And if you type in 1, 2, 3, 4, it will unlock. I'm going to briefly point out that we have a letter formatter. The letter formatter allows you to go in and change how your client letter, your title page, your slip sheets, how they look. However, we're not going to be going into that here. We have a very detailed video on the website for that, and I recommend you check that out if that's something you're interested in. The last thing I will say is, if you like making backups of things that you print and you don't want to worry about having to click the archive return button when after you print something, you can check this box here, auto create PDF when printing a completed return. And that means every time you print a return, it will also make a PDF backup in your settings and data folder. So that's a pretty useful feature that I don't think a lot of our clients, or I don't think enough of our clients utilize. Again, we're pushing the OK button to go back to the previous screen, which was the defaults and settings. I'm going to scroll down here. We're going to take a look at not each setting individually, but we'll be looking at some of the standout ones in each section. So here we have one that I wanted to point out, which is the default language preference to Spanish. If you are in a primarily Spanish-speaking area, and most of your clients would prefer their information from the IRS be delivered to them in Spanish, checking this will automatically change their language preference selection on the 1040 to be Spanish. Another one for this section is the verify social security numbers, routing numbers, and account numbers by keying them in twice. With this selected, anytime you type in a social security number, routing number, or account number, you'll have to type it in a second time to make sure that it matched the first time you typed it. So if you're kind of like me and you have a little bit of dyslexia when you're typing, this could be a good option for you to make sure that you're getting the right information into the return. In the W-2 input section, if you're in California specifically, I would recommend you put on this input SDI on W-2s. This will automatically calculate and input the SDI amounts on your W-2s so you don't have to do it. You can always change the SDI later if it's not exactly what's on the W-2, but it uses the correct values to calculate it. We're going to skip some of these. We're going to go into the other settings. We're going to look at preview return after archive. This should usually be checked by default, but I recommend checking it if it's not. This will allow, after you archive a return, it'll automatically show up a preview of what you just archived, so you can double check that it's the correct thing. If you are a Taxcom client or a Textilink client as well, this is where you'll put in your API settings. That's what connects the Taxware program to the Textilink or Taxcom programs. If you have a touch screen, or if you're comfortable with allowing your client to use a mouse to sign their signature, you can check this button, the use electronic signature without signature pad. When you do this, a little box will come up, and then when you're doing something that requires a signature, and it'll allow them to use the mouse or use the touch screen on your computer to write their name in. Lastly, we have the electronic filing settings. The ones I recommend here are preview acts instead of printing. If you're not looking to archive all those acknowledgements all the time, if you'd rather save some paper, previewing acts instead of printing will, every time you get in your acknowledgements, the acts will show up on your screen as a PDF, and then you can choose to print them there if you need them, or if you don't need them, you can just close them out. There's also autosave PDF file of acknowledgements, where every time you get in acknowledgements, it'll also save a PDF copy of those acknowledgements separately. So you not only have the ability to reprint acts one at a time, but you'll have a PDF copy of any batches of acts that you got. If you do a lot of returns, I really recommend checking this box. That's it for the defaults and settings. So let's go ahead and push OK once more to go into our main menu. From our main menu, we're going to go to miscellaneous features to look at one key feature that everyone should have. If you don't already have some sort of backup system, please use the backup system here. You will need some sort of external hard drive, and then you can select this backup storage path to be your external hard drive. Then anytime you click this backup button, it's going to back up all of your settings and data onto the onto your external hard drive. You can also add a schedule. So I can say, hey, back up this every day, or every, once a week, once every 2 weeks, however often you want to back up. And then when you close the program after that amount of time has passed, then it will prompt you and say, hey, there's a backup due. Do you want to do a backup now? So every year we get clients who call in who say their computer broke, or in some cases, somebody drove a car into their office and destroyed their equipment. And we do not save any copies of your data. Your data is all on your computers. So if you don't have a backup, there's not much we can do to restore that information for you. So please make sure that you have a backup if you haven't thought about it already. We're going to go OK to return back to the main menu here. Next, let's look at the 3 buttons that are going to be used the most during the tax year, which is the new client, the recall client, and the recall prior button. This is how you're going to input clients or work on clients that you've already started. We'll take a look at new client a little bit later. We'll start off with recall prior. When you recall a prior year client, it will give you a list of all of the clients you did in our program last year, or if you're a new client, any data that we've converted for you from last year, if possible. When you double click on that client, it's going to bring them forward into the new year, and it's going to update with any information that can be carried over being carried over. Let's see here. One thing to note about the prior year clients that might be a little bit different from other tax software is that we move clients over one at a time from the prior year, as opposed to all at once. The reason we do this is because, one, you don't want to be carrying clients that you had 10 years ago who haven't shown up in 9 years. There's not really a reason to keep carrying that information forward. But also there's certain things we can do by only bringing over the prior clients if you're using them, which is to create lists of clients that are lost, clients that didn't come over from last year that uh, uh, that haven't returned, or new client lists where you're like, these are the clients that are new for this year only. So those are that might be a little bit different for you depending on which software you're coming from. You can also see on the left-hand side here, we have different search fields. If you had a lot more clients, I only have the one for prior year, but you can search the clients through that. We'll see that in the recall client screen, which we're going to right now. So we're going to push OK and go back to the recall client screen. Here we have all the clients that we've started so far for the year. We can search through these clients through these search fields here. So I can put in a client ID of 20, and that'll bring up Violet, or I can put in a full name and I can just start typing a name. So let's say I wanted Carl, and you can see as I type, it starts eliminating the options. So even if I didn't type in the full thing, I might see, oh, there's Carl, and then I can just double click on Carl from there. One thing to note here is that maybe this looks a little too busy for you. You don't like having all this information here at the top. You don't really need to know their prior year unpaid bill or their bill balance due, or maybe you wanted to see their cell phone number and not just their home phone number. You can click up here where it says Edit Client Grid. And this gives you control of what shows here in the client grid. So for example, if I wanted to remove those prior year unpaid bills, I can remove those. And let's say I'm in an office and I wanted to know who the preparer was. I can double click that preparer. Let's also say I wanted to have the social security number show up before the names. I can move that up like that and then save. Now I've condensed things and I have things that I want that weren't there before. I have the preparer information. I have the social security number before the full names and all that. If you mess it up too badly, let's say you accidentally remove everything and you don't want to deal with having to put everything back where it was, you can click this Restore Defaults button, and that will restore it back to how it was. Okay. We also have some filters here, which are really useful. We can look at our prior year clients from this screen. This prior year doesn't show up because they're already in the current year. You can also click all to see both the prior and current year clients at the same time, which is pretty useful. On the e-file status filters, this will filter based on the coloring that you see here. So if I only wanted to see accepted returns, I can click the accepted button, and that shows only the accepted ones. We have the rejected ones, the awaiting acknowledgement ones, the ones that don't have any status. And if I had these others for no e-file or on extension, then those would also show up. Lastly, we have a filter here for the preparer. If you're in a big office and you wanted to sort by preparer, you can click this drop down and we can see like, oh, well, what's David done? David's done, these ones, or which ones have Ed done? Ed's done these ones. Okay. That about covers it for the recall client screen. So we're going to go ahead and open up a client now to go through the program flow of how a return goes. So we'll open up Azalea here. This is the basic information screen. You have their basic information. You have their dependent information, special filing categories. I said earlier I would show you where to change their preparer. Down here, the tax preparer assigned can be changed. We'll always start out with your default, but if you put in the wrong one, you can change it by pushing this button and then it'll select from a list. Same with the ERO. If you pick the wrong ERO and you have multiple EROs. Okay. The way the program works is there's a certain flow to how it works. We want you to put in all the basic information. Then we want you to put in all of the federal information by either using the line input and the forms and schedules. And then we want you to go into the summary menu where you'll then put in the state information if there's anything in particular there. What's the line input and the forms and schedules? Well, the line input is what looks like the 1040. So from here, we would be able to put in everything that we want to as if we were looking at a 1040 itself. So for example, if I wanted to put in the Schedule A, which would go on line 12 of the 1040, I can come down here to line 12, standard deduction, click on line 12, and that'll bring me into the Schedule A. Okay. While we're here on the Schedule A, I'm just going to show you another neat feature that we have, which is the live preview feature. If you have multiple monitors, this is really useful if you have like a customer facing monitor so that they can see what you're doing while you're doing it. We'll push F12 here, which is the live preview hotkey we can see in the bottom. That'll bring up this little window, but we're going to change its size. There we go. And now we can see that we're on the Schedule A. And if I put in something here like $1,000 for medical insurance, you'll see that it immediately updates on the Schedule A over here. So as I'm putting in information for the client can see what I'm putting in. They'll be able to say if, oh, you made a mistake on that particular line, or, if you just wanted them to make sure that the numbers are correct or their socials are correct or that you're inputting the correct information, you can show them that information. Okay. When you click OK, it'll also follow you around. So by clicking OK here, I go to the 1040 and it'll show the 1040 to them as well. Okay. I'm going to go ahead and close this out now because it's really best with multiple monitors so that you have more room to work. But I only have one to show you here today. One other feature here that we can show is, the forms and schedules screen. So let's say we like the line input screen for some things, but we like the forms and schedules screen for other things. The forms and schedules screen you can get to by clicking this button up here, forms and schedules. And you can get back to the line input by pushing the button at the top that says line input. And the forms and schedules screen just has a list of every form and schedule in somewhat alphabetical order. So you have the schedules with 1, 2, 3, and then the lettered schedules followed by the form numbers in numerical order, and then followed by some categories of things that show up at the end. Okay. One thing for forms and for anywhere in the program actually is that you can, if things are too small for you, you can zoom in by using the control key on your keyboard and the wheel on your mouse to zoom in or zoom out of the program. You can do that anywhere in the program. Okay. So once you put in your information, your Schedule A information, any other things that you have to put in, you'll push OK from either the forms and schedule screen or the line input screen, and that'll take you to the summary menu. From the summary menu, you will put in your state information here. So in this case, California, and you would click the state input button to take you to the state return. For most states, or for most returns, in fact, just going into the state return is pretty much all you need, maybe putting in some direct deposit information, and that's it. But if you do need to make more adjustments on that state, then going into the state information, there'll be a whole separate forms and schedules thing you do there to go in and put in the information for your state. We won't be going into each individual state here because that would take hours. So if you have any questions on your particular state, I recommend contacting technical support later when you have a question, and we can answer that for you. But it should be pretty straightforward. It follows the same sort of flow as the line input or the forms and schedules, where it'll just give you a list of things to go through. Okay. Also on the summary menu here, we have some print options. So after you've done the state return, you'll want to probably print the return. You can print the return here or preview the return. You can also go into form print to print only particular forms that you want. So if we click form print, we can maybe only click the 1040 or only the 4797. Or we can go into state forms and print particular forms from the state. One particularly useful button is the check all required button. This will show you all of the forms that are currently required on this particular return. So that'll skip anything like bill or title page, and it'll just give you a bare bones. This is what you would have to send in if you were sending it to the IRS. not only can you print an individual form, you can also preview or archive to PDF individual forms as well. Let's see. Last for this section, we'll cover the billing information. We'll be coming back to the summary menu a little bit later after we add a new client, because we'll be walking through a return as well. So don't worry if it seems like I missed something, we'll be coming back there. But the billing information here, like I said, it's snapshot billing. So for example, on the default earlier, you saw that I had put in $100, I think, for the 1040, but here it's 150. That means that I came into here and I changed. I can even change it again. I can change it to 75, but that's not going to change what's on the defaults. So let me show you that actually. So I put to 75 here for the 1040, and let's go look at the billing here. And you can see that, no, it's still at $100 here. It doesn't change the defaults. It's only changing it on that one particular return. Okay. Let's go back into our return here. And if you're wondering how I'm moving around the program so fast, I'll explain that a little bit later as well. Okay, so we can do the same thing here where we put in the information. If we wanted to restore to the defaults, which might be something you want to do, let's say you started this return a bit early before you had your billing and setup done, and these were both zeros, and you wanted to make sure that it met with your actual billings and defaults, you can click restore to default rates up here. So if I click on that and I choose the default rate that I want, then it'll pull from the defaults that we've made earlier. One other thing we can do is add adjustments. So we can add discounts of particular amounts. So not 800, that's too much. 80, I think will be correct. So that'll negative 80 discount here. We'll adjust it down here by negative 80. You can also put in a percentage discount, although with the way to directly manipulate these forms and schedules, I find most people just use that. But like, I'll give you a $15 discount on the 1040. We'll put in 85 there. One thing you can also do here is pay your client's bill. So if they paid their $100 and you're not using a separate billing system, you can come in here and keep track of who's paid you and who's not by putting in that they've paid their $100. That's very useful for our reports later. Our reports do keep track of this sort of information. And if you put in this information, it will keep track of it. Obviously, if you don't put in this information, then those reports are going to be less useful to you. Okay, let's get out of there and go back to the main menu now. I'm going to take a small break here. Get a drink of water, and then we can begin with the new client. So we're going to go through a client here. The first thing that'll come up when you hit new client is to enter a unique client ID. The client ID that you enter here, the program will automatically put in the next highest available client ID. This is generally what you will want to use unless you have a specific reason to want the client ID to be different. If you have some sort of filing system that requires their numbers to be the same, then that could be useful. That could be a reason why you want to put in a particular client ID. Otherwise, we recommend just leaving it what the program wants to put in there. So that's what I'm going to do here. Okay, we next have our filing status. We're going to go ahead and choose single for this particular client. And we're going to go ahead and fill out their information. Okay, you'll notice that once you put in the zip code, it puts in the city and state for you. That's true for most places in the program where you have to put in a zip code. Another important thing here is if you have a barcode scanner and your client brings in a W-2 that has a 2D barcode on it, you can use this button here to scan that barcode and it'll automatically put in this information for you. So if you have that option, it's a lot faster. Go ahead and push OK. We'll put in our client's daytime phone number. We'll say yes to that. This is also the screen where we would put in their email address, their identity protection PIN, if they have one of those, if they've been a victim of identity fraud in the past, the IRS will give them an identity protection PIN that needs to be put in. This will also be where you put in their driver's license information. Some states do require driver's license information to be input. So if you're in such a state, you'll need to put that in here. We're going to go ahead and push OK now to go to the next screen. And we get a pop-up. This pop-up says, would you like to enter dependents? So we're going to say yes. And we're going to add in a dependent here. Oops. So it gave me a warning there saying that I didn't put in the correct social security number because I missed a number. So I'm going to go back and put that in. We're going to click add. And that's put in that dependent. If we had more dependents to put in, we can just simply keep typing. But we're going to stop at 1 for this particular demonstration. Go ahead and push OK. OK to get back to the main basic information. So we've seen this screen before, but we're going to cover it a little more in detail now. So there's the basic information, which is everything we just entered. If you want to get back to the phone and driver's license information, we would click this button here, 23, phone driver's license protection PIN, brings us back here. We can edit that or add in a protection PIN that we might have forgotten or that the client didn't tell you they had, which is quite common. We can change the dependent information. So we can double click on our dependent. We can see that they have this information. If they're not eligible for the child tax credit, for instance, we can check that box. And there's some other different settings we can do. If a dependent has a protection PIN, we can enter that protection PIN in here as well. Pushing OK will get us back to the basic information screen. Let's, for instance, say we added an extra dependent on accident. We accidentally clicked add 2 times. So now we have this blank dependent that we don't want here on the basic information screen, because this is obviously bad information. What we can do is we can single click on that client. Anytime you see this kind of box in the program that has you add separate listings, we can single click on that and then hit delete on our keyboard to delete that dependent. We can say yes to that. Let's say we accidentally deleted our dependent here somehow. Oops. We can click on the restore button, and this will bring up any dependents we've deleted before, and we can restore that dependent. So those are those buttons, and that's how that's useful. Okay. Let's see here. We got special filing categories. There's a couple different special filing categories you may want to use. The most common are the itemizing for state or other purposes. If you have to itemize on your state, because if you don't itemize on your state, you can't, or if you itemize on the Fed, you have to itemize on the state or vice versa, then you can select this filing category. If the client is the dependent of another, then this option here is for them, the dependent of another option. So those are useful. We also have a checkbox that a lot of people ask about. We recently moved it to this location as well as kept it in the old location, which is the, did you have any financial interest in any virtual currency, if you had any crypto holdings. And so if they answer yes to that, you can answer that there, or it is still also on the other income adjustments and payments page, which we'll go into a little bit later for any clients that are returning. So that's pretty much it for the basic information. From here on, I'm going to start using the mouse-free selection. So if you remember earlier when I was on the billing and I went really fast through the program, what allowed me to do that was the mouse-free selection. Instead of using the mouse to click on boxes and to push the OK button and to click over here, that takes a little bit more time than I would like. I want to go faster than that. So instead, I can come down here to where it says mouse-free selection, and you'll notice that every single line in our program has a little brackets and then a number, and that brackets and a number, typing it in this mouse-free selection will get your cursor into that box. So for example, here, even the OK button down here has the 99 or slash. So if I push the slash button, I will automatically go to the next screen by, like, as if I hit the OK button. This box has shown up, this selection list box, which means that I have not selected previously whether I want to, by default, when hitting OK from basic information, go to forms and schedules or go to line input. I prefer forms and schedules, so I'm going to double click that. And then it'll never ask me that question again. So if I go back to basic information and I hit OK again, then it won't put me in there. If I hit basic information and I hit the slash, it takes me to the same spot as before. Okay. Let's go ahead and input a W-2 for our clients. Again, there's two ways we can put in W-2s. If we're on the line input screen, we can come to line 1, which is where you would put W-2s for a regular 1040. Or from forms and schedules, we can come down to line 81, which is the W-2 1099 input. Again, with the mouse free selection, even if I can't see it on the screen, if I know the number and I type in 81, it will take me to that screen immediately. Okay. We're going to go ahead and add a W-2. We're going to go ahead and put in the employer identification number. Let's say we're in a region where a lot of our clients come through a particular employer. Like if you've got a Walmart near you and there's a lot of Walmart employees that come in, oftentimes you don't want to keep typing in the same EIN over and over, the same employer name, same employer address if you have a lot of clients from that location. The way our program works is you'll type it in the first time, and after you've typed in an employer identification number once, the next time you type it in, it'll automatically complete everything else. You can also, if you click on the employer identification number and push F5, that'll take you to the employer lookup. So here you can see I've already put in a client before for this McDonald's location, and they'll come up onto the screen automatically by just double clicking. I didn't have to type in any of that. We'll put in our wages. This will automatically calculate most of everything that's usually automatically calculated. So you can come in and change those numbers if you need to. And then the withholdings we'll put in, I don't know, 2,000. Down here, we have the state information. So it should be California, but it's going to show me that it's red because I forgot the A. I'm going to leave that way to show you something later. But this red obviously is wrong, and so you should correct that at the time. We'll go ahead and put in our state's income tax there. You'll notice that these lines are blue. That is the wizard mode being on. That's what allowed everything to autocomplete. You can turn that on again, like if we leave and then come back. That will not be on by default. But you can turn it back on if you want. Let's say we made a mistake and it was actually 21,000. We can put in that 21,000 and it'll automatically update things as we go. I just wanted to point that out. Okay. We also have inputs here for 1099Rs, W-2s, different 1099s. So you can put in those in the same area. Usually you want to put in all the wage statements all at once. Okay. We're going to go ahead and leave there. We're going to go ahead and put in a Schedule C now. So we can go ahead and go to Schedule C, business income. Let's say we were on line input and we didn't want to go into forms and schedules to find the Schedule C, and we didn't want to look through all the list of the 1040 to go find the Schedule C. One thing we could do is we can click on this form search button up here, and we can just start typing in what we're looking for. So I can type in Schedule C. Did I spell something wrong? It's right here. So we'll just double click on it from there, and then it'll come up right away. Go ahead and add a Schedule C. We'll carry in our basic information. We will put in principal business. Business. We can look up a business code. I'm going to purposely not do this, again, to show you a validation error a little bit down the line. We can put in our business name. And we'll put in, I don't know, 2,500. Put in 1,200 for advertising, $300 for supplies. On certain forms in the program, you'll notice these little blue triangles that indicate there's an overflow statement available. So let's say instead of putting in the total for advertising, we wanted a little bit more detail here. We can push F3 to go to the overflow schedule, and we can start typing in descriptions of advertising. So we could say newspaper advertising, $300, and then internet advertising for $1,000. This will automatically total up the amounts. It'll also allow you to print an overflow schedule for your clients if they want to see the breakdown of all that. Some people like doing that, others don't. You'll see then that it turns green. Green means that there is an overflow schedule that has been entered for this particular line. That overflow schedule, by the way, is only for you and your clients. That information, what the individual lines, that does not go to the IRS for e-file. The IRS doesn't want that stuff. They just want the totals. Next, let's look at the business use of home. This is a sticking point for a lot of clients. They get a little stuck here because they see the business use of home form here. This is the full business use of home form. So if we click on this and we put in, all this information, then it will carry over. But most of the time, you just want to do the simplified business use of home. So if we come back, the simplified business use of home is right underneath that here. Area used exclusively for business, we'll say 300 and then 1500. And that's all we need to put in. But you'll notice that our expenses for business use of home doesn't show up. The reason for that is because I went into the 8829, it thinks that it's using the full form instead of this simplified method. And so we need to remove that 8829. Now you'll see that the expenses for business use of home have populated. Okay. That's it for the Schedule C. Here's another place to show some navigation tricks that you can use. Right now, I want to go back to the 1040, but I clicked in the Schedule C and I clicked in the actual individual Schedule C. So I'd have to push OK a couple times to get back to the input. I can also just go straight back to the line input by clicking this button up here. This is what we call our breadcrumb menu. It shows where exactly you are in the program. So if I click line input, then it'll save all that and it'll go directly back to the Schedule C. Now, something on this screen that you have probably noticed is this big red button that says due diligence up here on the top. And that's because of the EIC. Right now, this return qualifies for EIC, even without putting in the dependent information. And so it wants me to do the due diligence for that. In fact, if I try to leave this screen, it'll yell at me to do the due diligence. And in this case, that I have an available EIC amount if I add that dependent. So let's go ahead and push yes to this, which will take us to the EIC. And we will carry the dependent information in. So that'll put that dependent information in there. We have the due diligence still red here, so we can leave here. It wants us to put in the due diligence, but we're just going to continue to try and leave. And you can see that it really wants us to do the due diligence. So it's going to keep us here until we do it, or we can click the line to go back. But that's really to make you focus on that due diligence, because if you do not do the due diligence, the return will not e-file, it will not go through, it will be rejected. So let's go ahead and do that. One thing to note is that if you're bringing over a client from a prior year, you can recall your prior year due diligence, and it will bring all that information over, and you don't have to fill it out every single year for that particular client. If they're a new client, yeah, you got to fill out the due diligence manually. So let's go ahead and do that. Again, I'm using the mouse free keys to go a little bit faster than I normally would with the mouse here. So we'll do that. We'll go into the Schedule C. We'll say 1 and 12. This would be Bob filing. That one. No, 18, no. I think that's it for Schedule C. We do want Lil filing to be on the EIC here. So we'll do that. We'll go ahead and fill out their information. And like that. Okay, and that's our due diligence done for this return. Okay. So that takes care of that. We'll now go to the summary menu to take a look at how we would want to e-file this. So the first thing you'll want to do when you come to the place where you want to e-file is you want to check the validity. The validity checks do a pass through of your return to see if it would get rejected by the IRS the way it is. If this dot is red, it would get rejected. And so we don't let you send a return that would get rejected because it's just kind of a waste of time for you and for the IRS. So we can see here we've got a couple of issues. We have the employer zip code is missing on our W-2. Oops, let's go ahead and fix that. We can double click on this to go and fix it. Also, our business code is missing from our Schedule C, which I mentioned earlier. So we can double click on that to fix it as well. So let's do that for the business code that's missing. So we'll go to our Schedule C, we'll select a business code. I'm not going to go through and put a real business code, we'll just pick one from the list, but you should go in and pick the correct business code for your client. We'll also notice here that the zip code is missing, and it gives that message here on the right-hand side too, but in kind of a weird way. So there's two different kinds of error messages on the validation. There are internal validation errors, which are these ones on the left. These are errors that Taxware has put in themselves to be able to find specific things that are wrong. Then there's schema validation errors, which are put in by the states and the Fed themselves. So this double checks our work as well. So either of these can happen. These ones are a little bit easier to clear because they're usually written in a little bit more clear language. And if you double click on them, the program takes you to them. So this one says the zip code is missing, whereas this one says that there's a problem with the employer address. It has incomplete content. It's expecting a zip code. Okay. The schema validation also has an XPath. The XPath tells you exactly usually what form that is on. So this form says W-2, IRS W-2, and it's the employer US address location. So we can narrow it down to just that position. This line number and position are not too useful for a tech or for you to look at, but what it is useful for is for the program to go and highlight where this error occurs in your XML. Your XML is actually what the IRS gets when you send a return. So if I were to send this return right now, the IRS isn't going to get like a completed list of PDFs and attachments and notes that you've sent. Instead, they get a text document that looks like this. And that's what the IRS uses to go through and process your return. So if we scroll down here till we find the yellow bit, we have the employer address here, which is missing that zip code. So we can look here and you'll see, oh, this is the W-2. And then everything indented within this W-2, that is the actual W-2. So everything from here to down here is the W-2. It also has a problem with the state abbreviation code. So it's highlighted that, which is another one of the validation errors, which is this one. This one doesn't say that it's expecting an element. It says that it has a constraint failure, meaning that it's not complete. It's not what it's supposed to be. You don't need to know all the stuff that I'm telling you about these schema validation errors. And if it's too confusing for you, you don't have to worry about it too much, but you will pick it up over time. If you have one of these validation errors, you can just call tech support and we will help you with that. But we will try to teach you a little bit so you can do that on your own as well. Okay. Anyways, let's go fix our return here. So let's go back to the W-2 and we will go ahead and fix our state missing that letter. We will fix our zip code, 90210. And the last one here has to do with the 8879, and you'll always see this one. This just happens when you haven't gone to the e-file screen and printed your 8879 yet. So if we click OK, we can now go to our e-file screen, which is the next step for e-file. So we'll go to the e-file screen here. This is the e-file screen. You'll see our ERO information, but also have options to print out the 8879 or the 8453, which are the signature documents. You can also put in your bank application. So if you do a bank application, this is where you will do it. I do not have bank products set up for this particular demonstration, do go watch our videos on the bank application, or if you have a question, contact your salesperson or tech to go over bank applications with you. Once we click on the preview 8879, you're going to see that this status will change from no status to transmit. So we'll say yes. That will turn out our 8879. There we go. We would have our client sign that, and then the return is ready to send, as long as, if we come back to the summary menu, this light is green. So you'll see that now we've printed the 8879, the program knows that that validation is cleared. If we go into validity checks, everything's green on our side. The program automatically performs a validity check when you click the send button. So if you forget to look at the validity, it's not the end of the world. The program's going to check and make sure everything's correct before it sends it off, and it won't let you send it if there's an issue with the validity. Okay. One other thing you can see from this screen is the direct deposit information. So if your client has direct deposit, you can put that information. That information would show up here. And if you've forgotten to put it in, you can click this button. So you can get to direct deposit from here, or from the summary menu, you can get to direct deposit up here on the summary menu. This person has quite a big refund, so let's go ahead and put in their bank account information. Just like the W-2 screen, we have a lookup for financial institutions in case, there's not that many banks out there. Most people have, Wells Fargo or Bank of America or one of the big ones. And so there's no need to type that in a whole bunch of times. You can push F5 on that screen and choose the bank that they're using. Just double check that the routing number is correct. And then you can type in their account. So we'll put in their account. You'll see now that on the e-file screen, that information shows up. Okay. I see a question here. It says, after the taxes has been sent to the IRS, can the bank information still be input while it's awaiting acknowledgement? The answer is no. Once the return is sent, it spends about, 10 seconds before it actually gets processed by the IRS typically. So there's no time between you sending it and the IRS receiving and processing it before you can, where you can actually change it. If that happens, they will just get a paper check. Okay. From here, if we want to send to the return, we can click on, we can do two ways. There's the batch e-file way, or there's the A to A e-file, or the individual return way. Most people use the individual return way, which is just clicking this button up here at the top that says A to A e-file. Clicking that button will send the return and does the validity checks and everything as well. Once a return is sent, you can track its progress on the e-file status page, which we'll look at in just a second. Also, if you wanted to send a extension, you can click the transmit 4868 button. That'll send off an extension for your return. Just don't get those two confused. If you click this one, it's an extension. You click this one, it's the actual return. Sometimes that one will be gray, and that's because you haven't printed the 8879 yet. So once you print the 8879 and it sets to transmit, then you'll see it there. All right, so let's go take a look at that e-file status page. We're done with this client. We're going to go to the e-file status page here on the main menu. And you can see here all of the returns that you've sent previously. We have filters just like we do for the recall client screen, where you can search by social security number, by last name, full name, client ID. You can also use these buttons up here at the top in any of the places where you see this kind of setup to sort by that in an easier way. So I can sort by social security number, I can sort by name, I can sort by gov code or status. We also have e-file status filters here on the side. So I can show only the accepted returns, only the rejected returns, only returns that are awaiting acknowledgement. And if you have multiple offices, you might set up a station ID. Your tech or salesperson will help you with that. And you can also view station IDs with this button down here. If we click on one of these returns, so click on pork e-pig here, you'd be able to see the different information here on the right-hand side. Okay. that's about it for the e-file status page. The batch e-file page is next. On the batch e-file page, we can transmit returns. So the other screen I showed you to transmit returns sends a single return. But if you're in a big office and you want to control when returns are sent and you want to send them all in big batches, that's where this batch transmit returns come in. I don't have anything set up for sending on returns yet, so we're not going to go into the transmit returns, but from that screen, you can select which returns are transmitted and then transmit them all in one go. So that's pretty useful. We also have another Get Axe button here. When your acknowledgements are ready, you can click this Get Acknowledgements button. You can click the e-file status screen and click this Get Acknowledgements button. Or you can click the recall client screen and you can click this Get Acknowledgement button. We really want to make sure that you get your acknowledgements because that's what tells you whether or not your return is accepted or rejected. In fact, so many people were not getting their acknowledgements when they should have. We actually made it so that when you do have acknowledgements ready, they'll show up as a little bubble here that shows you the number of acknowledgements you have awaiting, as well as a little pop-up down up here on the top right that will show you which programs you have acknowledgements awaiting. So even if you were doing returns in our corporate program, if there are acknowledgements awaiting for the corporate program, you will see a message up here on the top right showing you that there are indeed acknowledgements awaiting. Okay. The last thing we'll look at is the tax reports, where you have a number of reports you can do that have useful information on them. Things like the all clients list, which will just print out a list of your clients. The lost clients list or the new clients list I talked about earlier, where if you have clients that came over from last year, or I'm sorry, clients that didn't come over from last year, the lost clients list will give you a list of those clients. So you can maybe give them a call before the end of the season to see if, if they just give them a reminder that their taxes are due. Or the new clients list, if you want a list of all the new clients you got this year, so you can send out information to them. It's pretty useful. Also here we have mailing labels. So if you want to print out, a thank you card for every single one of your clients or other reasons why you'd want big mailing label lists, you can do that. We have common Avery size labels. You'll select them. You can then print out the mailing labels for certain lists of clients. There's also there's also a more detailed version of this mailing label list called Taxbase, which is built. It used to be its own separate program from Taxware, but we then built it into the Wintax program. It's Taxbase here, and this allows you to select in much more fine detail who you want in that list of clients that you're printing. So, for example, you could say, I want to print everybody who has, $10,000 or more on a W-2, or I want everybody who had EIC this year to be, I want to get a list of all of those clients. So you can do that sort of thing. It gets you a lot of analytical information that you can get from Taxbase. Okay. And with that, I believe we've gone over every single button here. We went over the new client, we went over the recall client. Yeah, I think we're good. It looks like most of the answers or most of the questions have been answered, but if you have any last minute questions, please put them in the Q&A now. I'll wait a little while. I'll see if there's any particular questions that we should mention out loud here. Let's see. You did, someone had a question about how to add a logo to the client letter. The letter formatter video in our website does have that, the answer to that question. You would go into the print setup, to the letter formatter. You would select your client for a default. You would go into the default letter here. So we have this default logo that's here, but if you wanted to change that, you could load in a new logo. You can also add in pictures by clicking the add picture button here to the side and adding in a new picture, where you would then double click on it and load that. So I hope that answers your question. If not, go watch that video. It has a lot more answers to things like that. Nope. Okay. So someone wants to know if I can demo the electronic signature button. I don't think I can. Hold on 1 minute. I need to check to see if I have something installed for that. I don't want to have you guys wait while I install something, but we'll see. Let's see. So if I check this, we go into this return and electronically sign. Okay. So yeah, looks like I can. So this is what would come up. You click that electronically sign button. The taxpayer signature box comes up. Normally, if you have a Topaz signature, you would put in that information here, or like they would sign it on the Topaz signature pad. But if you don't have that and you've got that checkbox checked I showed you earlier, if you have a touch screen, they can use the touch screen to draw their name, or they can use the mouse to draw their. Okay, I'm going to cancel out of it. So I believe I've answered that one. Show you how to use the recall button. So I assume you're meaning the recall client button. So when you click on the recall button, this will show you all the clients that you have for this year. You then just double click on them to go into that one. If you're recalling a client from a prior year, then from the main menu, you'd click recall prior and you'd click on that one to go in. How can you put in the mileage inside the Schedule C form? So if we go into the Schedule C, actually, let's use the new client we had because they have a Schedule C. So we'll go into Schedule C and we'll scroll down here. There's the car and truck worksheet, which if you're not doing depreciation, you can use the car and truck worksheet. So we'll go into there. And down here, we would put information on the vehicle. And then down here, it has the business mileage from different parts. This year is a little bit different than prior years in that the business mileage is split up between January and June because the business mileage rate changed halfway through the year. So you'll put in there January through June business mileage, then you'll put their July through December business mileage. Okay. So I've answered that one. How do you email the return to a client? So the easiest way to email the return to a client, in my experience, is by first archiving the return. If you're going to be emailing it to a client, then you'll want to have the protect PDF with social security number checkbox checked for added security. That's in the print setup. You will click on archive return. This will archive the return to a particular location, our settings and data folder. I'm going to say, no, I don't want to look at it right now. You would click support and open PDF archive folder. This will bring up that location in Windows Explorer. So you can see here we have Bob filing. That's the return. And then from there, it's really easy to just go to your email software of your choice and drag and drop that onto your email. So that's the easiest way that I find most people can do it. There are other options that you have. We have an entire sister program called Taxcom that allows you to do much more powerful things with emailing, setting up appointments with your client, having face-to-face meetings, and that sort of thing. I believe we do have videos on the Taxcom. Catherine can correct me if I'm wrong on that, but those should be on the website as well, or there should be a link somewhere, or you'll get information about that afterwards. Okay. Explain the archive button. The archive button is, archive is just a term we use to say, make whatever it is you're archiving into a PDF. So archiving the return takes a preview of the return and saves that PDF preview as a PDF into your archive, basically your place where we store your data. So when we archive the return, we come here to the Open PDF Archive folder, and it'll have a copy of every return you've ever archived. So it's just a way to say paperless, paperless storage of your documents, PDF copies of that. So anytime you see the word archive in the program, that's what it means. Hope that answered that question. Right. I see the questions list is now empty. So I think I'm going to say that we're done here. Is that right, Catherine?
I think so, Matt. Thank you very much for taking the time to go through this program in a very detailed way. And like I said before, many people find that there's different parts of the program that they have never even delved into yet, and they've used it for many years. So thank you again for this tour, for this demonstration. I hope that our clients here have found it very valuable as well. I think the only last thing I was going to share is that our office hours are 7 a.m. to 6 p.m. Monday through Friday Pacific time, and also on Saturday 8 to 12 Pacific time. And so we are open those extended hours to serve you during this tax season. If you have any further questions, our phone number is 909-931-3131 for tech support. Have your client ID available and ready to go. We're grateful for you to be with us this day. Recording will be available and up on our website in a couple of days in the tutorial video section. So thank you very much. Have a great day.